What's up, guys? So today we're going to be doing a tour review on the entire mini collection released so far. Now, in terms of the mini collection, I will only be going over the ones that have been released in the boxes via the series, so there's not going to be any multi-packs or any Advent Calendar minis. Well, except for this one. But, yeah, let's get right into it. And before we get into it, I just wanted to advise you guys, that whenever, as we go through these, we're going to be going over just the new figures that were released, new species, new colors, and stuff like that. Just to avoid some filler in this. So, yeah, let's get to it. We're going to be starting off with Wave 1 of the Jurassic World Dominion minis. Now, this was, like, the very first wave of, like, the brand new style of minis. See, beforehand, we had minis that were pretty much the same scale and always had articulation points. Meanwhile, this is a slightly different scale. Some of the figures are still the same size as their predecessors, like, for example, the T-Rex and Brachiosaurus, which we'll go over to in a bit. But a lot of them are now smaller than the others, and a lot of them don't have articulation points because of that reason. But, yeah, so let's just get into it. So first up, we got the T-Rex. Now, the T-Rex is pretty iconic at this point. I mean, we get it in almost every wave. And, yeah, it's just a brown T-Rex with a nice colored back and a reddish-brown belly. Now, this wave is actually quite common. You can't buy it at stores anymore, but you can still find them on eBay pretty abundantly, actually. But anyways, the jaw can open and close, and that's pretty much it with this figure. And next up is the Giganotosaurus, and this thing is, it's just something else, really. I mean, it's just mild at best. I mean, its mouth can open and close, but that's really it. It's just, it feels a bit blocky to me. Maybe just because of the ridges in it, I don't know. I don't understand what makes this thing so repulsive to me, but it does. And next up, we got the Therizinosaurus. So we finished off the final battle, and this figure's arms can rotate a full 360, and that's it for this figure. And then we got the Lystrosaurus. Now, the Lystrosaurus is yeah, it's something else. It's just. Ew. Yeah, this figure is pretty ugly, so let's get him out of here. And next up is the Yanchuanosaurus, and this figure is okay. Nothing too special, but it's just okay. The mouth can open and close. Well, it's kind of hard to open it, but if you push its head down, it'll open. At least if you're trying to open it from that point. But, yeah. And next up is Velociraptor Blue. Now, this is like the only time that she's released in a wave for a little while at least. And, I don't know why. But here she is in this wave. And so, yeah. So, here she is. And this is the first one that we don't get articulation for, well, aside from the Lystrosaurus, but she's pretty decent. And next up is the Stegosaurus. Now, I don't know what happened with my Stegosaurus. There's barely any sort of brown on this side, and there's a lot of brown on this side. So, yeah, I don't know what happened there. But it can still waggle its tail back and forth and rotate a full 360. And there's even some eye paint on this one, which would slowly be phased out after literally just one wave. Which I understand with this one, because its head is really tiny, and those eyes are barely smaller than a grain of salt. So, yeah, feel bad for that guy. And then we got a Velociraptor Ghost, and it's pretty decent. Nothing too special. A lot of these guys are just pretty decent and not too special, so, yeah, sorry if it gets repetitive, but sorry. But anyways, she's all rubbery and stuff, and, yeah. So, here. And next up is the Quetzalcoatlus, one of my original favorite minis. I actually got this one off of eBay because I didn't find it in stores until like later. But it's with me now, so. Anyways, its wings can flap around like the original mini Pteranodon. But yeah. And then he went away, waddle waddle, until the Galminer showed up. And this figure is pretty decent. Nothing too special again. It's just, They actually had to update the feet sculpts because the original one just could not stand at all. So, yeah. So now he goes away. And next up is the Baryonyx, and this one is really, really mild. It's just a white Baryonyx, well, more of a grayish, yellowish kind of cream color instead. And it's just so mild. So, yeah. Let's just get him out of here. And then we got the Iguanodon, which is just... It's not as mild as the Baryonyx, but again, mild. And its peg hole stretches pretty far out this way. I don't know what happened there. But, yeah, again, this one doesn't move because of the size. So, And next up we got the Pteranodon, which this figure feels a little bit harder than the other ones for some reason. I don't know why, but it just does. And again, no articulation, and, yeah. And finally, the Triceratops, and I actually like this thing a little bit more than the previous Triceratopses. It's at a different pose where it looks like it's actually going to be charging at you. And overall, it looks pretty decent. But not too decent enough to be my favorite, so, yeah, that is the entirety of Wave 1 for the Jurassic World Dominion Minis. And now it's time for the Jurassic World Dominion Minis Wave 2. So these minis are not as common as the Wave 1 Dominion Minis, but there's a pretty decent amount of listings out there. What you really need to look for is a slightly bigger logo. Like, for example, this is the previous box. The logo is pretty small. It fits in between these ridges or bars or whatever you want to call them. Meanwhile, this one is slightly expanded, and yeah. And so we shall start looking at the minis, shall we? So first up is the T-Rex, and this one's pretty decent. And another one of my favorites, actually. And overall, it's just pretty cool. I like the colors on this one much better than the brown T-Rex, but, I mean, And next up we got the Pyroraptor. And, yeah, this figure is okay. Nothing too special, but it's okay. It's also quite rubbery, and it's just, yeah. Whoop. And next up we got this reddish-brown Sycamimous. I actually don't really know what to describe this color. It looks like a grayish-purple or pink, or I really don't know how to describe it. Looks some green on his back and an articulated jaw. And, yeah, it's pretty decent. And then we got this Atrociraptor, and it looks okay. This is Atrociraptor Red. And, yeah, it looks cool. And so, let's just fly him away. And next up we got this green Stegosaurus, which is when we lost the eye paint for the Stegosaurs. And the Iguanodons, actually. But we'll get into that pretty soon. So, yeah. Again, the tail can waggle and spin a 360. And I don't know what it is with these guys, but every single time I get one, their plates almost seem to be always warped. And, yeah, I don't know what's going on. And then we got the Dilophosaurus, and this figure is also, again, pretty decent. It's a little bit more on the favorite spectrum, but not too favorable. And, yeah. So, and next up we got this baryonyx, and it's nothing too special. It's just a green baryonyx with like really weird feet. I don't know what it is with the baryonyx, but they always seem to have the weirdest feet. Like they have a ginormous middle toenail on both feet actually, and I really don't know what goes on whenever they sculpt these things. So yeah, let's just put them back in the vault. And we got this Ankylosaurus, which is honestly one of the most disappointing minis, because while it does have some paint detail and eye paint, it's just a little patch of green on its back. Nothing special at all. I really don't know what went wrong with this. But yeah. Next up is this tan concavator, which is pretty decent. And this concavator suffers a little bit of repetition, not really in the line specifically in terms of the mystery boxes, but it's been featured in a multi-pack and an advent calendar. So yeah, it's been revitalized a couple times. And we got the iguanodon, which I mentioned earlier because of the lack of eye paint. And I understood the stegosaurus, but why the iguanodon? But yeah, like the previous one, it's pretty lackluster and doesn't really move at all. And so yeah. And then we got this Triceratops, which is not as good as the previous Triceratops, but it's still pretty good. And yeah, it's red. And then we got this Ceratosaurus, which is also pretty decent, and there's nothing too special about it. But yeah, its tail can like spin around if you make it spin around. But yeah, that is the entirety of the Jurassic World Dominion Minis Wave 2. And last but not least for Jurassic World Dominion, we got Wave 3. So this is the final wave for the Jurassic World Dominion minis, and this is by far the hardest kind of minis to collect. And there's barely any listings for the Wave 3 minis. And if you're trying to look for the Blue Ink, Chewinosaurus, the Moros, Intrepidus, or the Concavator, well, let me tell you, honey, this is going to be one of the most. Those are going to be one of the most difficult figures to collect, or to try to collect, if you can even find them. But anyways, I'll yap about it more whenever I get into those figures, which we're going to be saving for last, because those are difficult to collect. But anyways, let's start off with Velociraptor Tiger. And, yeah, it's pretty decent. Nothing too special. It's just Tiger. Yeah, it's basically just Ghost in Red, but Tiger. And next up we got this brown Ceratosaurus, which is pretty bad. If you ask me, I just don't really like it. That's all. So and next up we got this Parasaurolophus, and it's pretty decent. Although I'm kind of curious as to why they only released it in this one wave and hadn't released it again. They did put it in the giant battle pack along with the 2022 advent calendar, but apart from that, we haven't seen it since. So yeah, maybe we may need to investigate on that one. And next up we got the Suchomimus, and this figure is relatively easy to find. It was released in the latest wave of minis, so yeah, you got some sort of chance to find it there. And I like this one a little bit better than the Wave 2 Suchomimus. But yeah, so that's that for that. And next up is the Sinoceratops, which is a little bit harder to get, but it has its fair share of repetition. It was released in the Dino Trackers Wave 1, along with the recent Chaos Theory multi-pack, so you'll be able to find it. But yeah. Its head can move up and down and rotate a full 360, and yeah. And next up is Nasutoceratops, which I thought was released in Wave 2 of the Dino Trackers, which it was, but it didn't originally release in that wave. So yeah, I got this one, and it's pretty decent. Like I've been saying, it's pretty decent, nothing too special. And yeah. So the head can move up and down, and rotate a full 360. And next up we got the Stinky Mohawk. And this figure is also pretty decent, nothing too special about it. And yeah, so that's the Stinky Mohawk. And now it's time for the 3 hardest minis to find out of this entire collection. The Morris Intrepidus, the Concavenator, and the Yanchuanosaurus, the blue one. We're going to be starting off with this one, because it's actually the easiest one to find. So this Yanchuanosaurus is blue. It has a light yellow on its crests, and a mustard blue on its back, and a tan mouth, along with some red eyes. And its mouth can open and close. And, yeah. You do all that. And next up is the Concavenator, the green one. And this figure is okay. Nothing too special about it. It's really just okay. Feels a little bit stiffer than the previous Concavenator. But, I mean, who cares, honestly? But, yeah. And last but not least, the Morris Intrepidus. And honestly, this figure is my favorite one. Well, not like my absolute favorite, but it's up there in my favorites. It looks pretty cool, and I really like it. And I found a guy that was selling 2 Morris Intrepiduses and 2 of the green Concavenators that I just showed you for like $20, and I got them. So, yeah. And before you ask, no, I'm not giving my duplicates to anyone else. I'm keeping them. But, yeah. So, move on to the Dino Trackers! And now we're moving on to the Dino Trackers as the Morris Intrepidus ever so rudely decided to demand me to do. But, yeah, let's move on. Alright, so first off we got the Dimetrodon, and I really like this figure. Pretty decent, nothing too special. It was originally released in the Dominion Advent Calendar, I believe. And, yeah, it was pretty cool then, and it's still pretty cool now. This thing actually still has the same sculpt as the previously released Savage Strike Dimetrodon, but has the colors of the one from the human pack. And, I really like it overall. And next up is the Allosaurus. Now, I don't know what happened to my boy, but, they did something to him. Because originally, whenever the Dino Trackers minis released, they released the same one from the Chaotic Cargo pack, but I have no idea when they decided to just cheap out on this thing and give it less paint and no eye color at all. Because I only got this one from series 2 of the Epic Evolution minis. So, yeah, that's quite odd. So, I feel bad for this thing. So, And next up, we got the Kentrosaurus. And again, this one is also really lackluster. It's just an off-white color with like some green on its back, and that's literally the figure. So, yeah. And next up we got the Majungasaurus, and the Majungasaurus is pretty decent. Nothing too much. Just pretty decent. And, yeah. And next up we got the Sarcosuchus, and I don't know how they hadn't released a green Sarcosuchus yet, but, they need to get on that grind, like, immediately. So, And next up is the Oranosaurus, and this figure is also okay. It's nothing special at all, honestly. It's just okay. So, And next up is the Herrerasaurus, which I also like this guy. It looks pretty decent. And although it's kind of as lackluster as the Kentrosaurus, I like it a little bit more. So, yeah. And last but not least for this wave, we got the Amargasaurus. And, yeah, the Amargasaurus is pretty hard one to find. So, yeah. So, the head can move up and down, and can spin around. And that is it for the Dino Trackers Series 1 minis. And next up are the Dino Tracker Wave 2 minis. We're going to be starting off with the Spinosaurus, and honestly, I don't know how they hadn't already released it back in Dominion, but I guess we have it now for the Dino Trackers and Epic Evolution in the future. But, yeah, I don't really like this sculpt too much, mainly because the neck is, like, really long and really wrinkly, and I don't know what the hell's going on it. And I also don't like how it's super short and super thin like a rat tail. And I don't know why this thing has backwards thumbs. Like, why? That's a Herrerasaurus thing. But anyways, it's just a redesign. It's just a resculpt of the previous Spinosaurus from Fallen Kingdom. Just rubbery and cheaper. And the mouth could open and close. And, yeah, so that's about it. And next up is the Indominus Rex, which, again, I really don't know how they hadn't released this thing already beforehand, but, again, we have it now. And this figure is okay. It's just white with some metallic silver on its back, and, yeah. So, we just gotta make it float away. And next up we got the Carnotaurus, which was originally released in the Carnotaurus Clash Pack and hadn't even been virtually seen since then. Until the Dino Tracker Series 2 released. And, yeah, looks kind of nice. And so, yeah, let's have him get away. And next up is the Pentaceratops, which... this figure is my least favorite mini, honestly. Both the Pentaceratops and the two Pondactylus, so let's just go over them right now. They're both like the exact same kind of plastic, just with a slight difference of brightness. They both barely have any paint. I mean, I appreciate the effort given to the two Pondactylus with the eyes and all, but still horrible. And this one is also horrible. It's just there's a little patch of paint on the frill, and there's two, and the horns are painted. That's all this thing has. There's not even any eye paint. I don't even understand it. And next up we get the Albertosaurus, which I don't like that much, but not equally as terribly as the Pentaceratops and Tupondactylus. My biggest gripe is that the tail is pretty short, which I know is a problem for the previously released Albertosaurus from the line, but I think it needs a tail extension. And last but not least, we got the Cryptops. Now, this figure was actually quite a mystery. We didn't really know what it was, and the collector guide didn't tell us what it was. So we were left to speculate until we found out that it's a Cryptops. And it's okay. Kind of wish it had articulation if it was so mysterious, but again, it's okay. So, back to the pile it goes. And now next up are the Jurassic World Dino Tracker Wave 3 minis. Alright, so let's start off with Panthera. Now, Panthera, although she has made appearances before, this is like her first official release in this line of boxes. And, overall, she's okay. Nothing too special, but okay. And next up is the Borea Pelta, which this thing is mild. It's not even really okay, it's just mild. And next up we got the Bistahavisor, and I don't know why they had the spines on its tail, because the animal didn't have spines on its tail. I don't know where they got the idea from, but yeah, so it's okay. Next up we got the Nothosaurus, and it's also okay, nothing too special. I mean, it has a painted back and underside, so that's good, I guess. And last but not least, we got the Elasmosaurus, and yeah, overall, this thing is pretty decent. And so yeah, let's swim back to Epic Evolution. And next up is the Epic Evolution Minis from Series 1. And here is where we start to see the rapid decline of new species being added. So first up we got the Cryptosuchus, well no, not the Cryptosuchus, no. The Caprasuchus, and this thing is mild. It's pretty bare bones like some of the other ones. Just green with like some blue patches on him. It's just wah. And next up is the Sinotyrannus, and again, it's not as bare bones as the other one, but it's still meh. And yeah, same deal with the Indoraptor. It's just eh, and pretty rubbery. And finally, we got the Geosternbergia, and it's pretty decent. Nothing too special about it, just pretty decent. Actually, another one of my favorites, from this line at least. And, yeah. Now, let's move on to one of the most disappointing waves and the minis have seen in a long time. Epic Evolution Series 2. Now, this wave is arguably one of the most disappointing waves we have ever received out of any of these minis, because there was only one sole new species, and that is the Brachiosaurus. And granted, it is a pretty decent figure. The head moves up and down and stuff, and it can spin around full 360. But apart from that, it's pretty bare bones. I mean, there's two species that have been duplicated in this. There's a Sinotyrannus there and a Sinotyrannus there. And there's a Caprasuchus there and a Caprasuchus there. There was room for two more new species. Like, they could have paired these two and these two. This could have been like a whole other section where there's like new species. But no, they just... I don't even understand it, man. Let's just move on. And last but not least, we got the Epic Evolution Minis Series 3. Now, this is yet another turn of disappointing events where we have just like one new species and that's it. And from the looks of it, there doesn't seem to be anything like duplicated a few times in this. Like, unlike Series 2, where we got two Sinotyrannus and two Caprasuchuses. But, yeah, overall, that's just really disappointing. And yes, the Mosasaurus is downscaled from the previous version, which was from the Mosasaurus Mayhem pack, in which this thing is scaled drastically down. Well, I should have said scaled down drastically, but my brain works in mysterious ways. And, yeah, this figure is just really, really mild. I mean, it's pretty cool, but again, it's just... it could have been saved with a few other species in this line. So, yeah. As of now, the Chaos Theory minis hadn't officially been released yet, although there have been some listings for the Chaos Theory minis popping up on eBay. There's just none of the new species have popped up yet, so on the lookout for those. And yeah, so I'll see you guys in the next video, and goodbye.